These guys from a podcast called This Podcast is Making Me Thursday want to talk to you. And I think and I said, you don't have to tell me what it's about. I said, if it's called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, you definitely don't need to tell me what it's about. And I'm going on. This is what I want to do.
It's a Seinfeld podcast. It's called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty. But I thought, this is what a podcast should be.
I just did the Seinfeld guys pod the other day. It came up.
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Oh,
that one. Shout out. We've done it. I've done it. Have you did it?
I've not gotten a chance to do it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
It's so fun. They're so fun.
When I don't know, it must have shown up in my feed, but I see these guys tweeting about Seinfeld. I'm like, oh, what's this? And I find it's a podcast called This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty.
One of the most popular Seinfeld podcasts is This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, co-hosted by Chris O'Hara and Tony Chulo.
Welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. Today's guest is an actress of the Broadway stage and screen. She hosts a very popular podcast, Little Known Facts. You know her from Tanner 88, Damages, Law & Order, Kissing Jessica Stein, NYPD Blue. And of course, she played Joyce, the aerobics instructor in the classic season 4 Seinfeld episode, The Contest. Please welcome Ilana Levine. Ilana, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're honored to have Teaneck, New Jersey native Ilana Levine on the program. We'll get into that in a little bit. But take us back. Tony mentioned The Contest, a classic, might be the most classic episode of all time. November 18th of 1992, not too long ago, right, Ilana? So take us back. Tell us a little bit about how the role of Joyce came about. Was there an audition process? Tell us a little bit, because that was early on in your career. Curious how you landed that role.
Okay, so first of all, this is crazy, but I'm going to show you guys. This is the script.
Wow.
You see that? To The Contest. I'm sure other people have found their scripts and shared them with you. I had, as your listeners know, when you shoot a sitcom, as the days go by, the pages of the script, I don't know, do you guys put up video or is this just an audio? Both.
Yeah, we do video. Okay. Yeah, mostly on video.
So you'll see there's yellow pages, there's pink pages. I don't know if it's working for you guys to see the colors, but I also see on the back I was running my lines, and you can see that. And then it says Nancy at extension 6105 is who I ask for seats and parking. And I've not looked at that for tape day, obviously, in so long. I had others because, as I said, each day you would get new colors and pages. And over the years, for so many charities, I've donated different versions of the script because, Seinfeld has just remained such a beloved show. And now more and more, for generations, right? Like now people's children are finding it and loving it, or being on a plane and seeing it. So this is my last copy. I'm so thrilled that I found it, because had you not said the year, I'd have no memory.
Does it say The Contest on there?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Can you not see? Yeah, it says Seinfeld, The Contest. Then it says number 04-04, meaning season 4.
Right.
It says 0411. Maybe it was episode 11. You guys would know better than I. Larry wrote it, Larry David. Tom Sharones directed it. Andy Ackerman, actually, I believe, was in the room when I auditioned, even though he didn't.
Really?
Even though he didn't direct this episode. At the time, I was living in LA, and there was a casting group called Lieberman Hirschfeld. And when you're starting out as an actor, nothing is more incredible than just finding people early on who get you. And, you might go in a few times before they actually cast you in something. But I was just doing really well at that moment, my first year living in LA, beyond pilot season, with sort of what was then, I like to think of like the My Cousin Vinny character. That was it was around the time that My Cousin Vinny came out, and Marissa Tomei's character, if you were a girl with curly hair and who came from the East Coast and could do a Brooklyn accent, I think I did that character for many, many auditions and landed a lot of parts in that milieu, as it were.
Right.
So I came in, I had not, I mean, it was season 4, and I don't think I'd watched the show. I wasn't someone who
Oh, wow.
immediately had found it. So I went in a little bit blind, and maybe that's good because if I'd realized how important Seinfeld was going to be to the history of television and comedy
Right.
at large, I probably would have choked as we often do when we meet our heroes. So I went in. Because I had read so much for them, sometimes you have to pre-read for things where you just read for the casting director. I went straight to producers. I read with Jerry, and a casting director probably, everyone read a bunch of different parts from Jerry to the casting people. And Jerry laughed so much. And I think what we read is a scene that's now on the the reel of, so the first scene I'm in is cut from the episode when it aired, although it's in the script. And I think that was the scene I auditioned with, or one of them. And I just was like, whatever happens, I don't know who this Jerry Seinfeld is, but he's the greatest person to audition for because he was so warm and wonderful. And I got the job and I showed up, and I knew Jason Alexander a little bit from New York and theater, and Michael had been around, had a connection to New York theater also. And Jerry was someone who was so like, I'm a stand-up, I'm not an actor, all ideas welcome. Like he was not, he was incredibly humble, actually. Best idea wins. And Tom Sharon's too. I can't remember now, but I remember finding out at the time that he had directed, I don't know if it was I Love Lucy, but he was one of these guys who had directed really classic sitcoms. And I remember thinking how wonderful that someone who has such a incredible history with sitcoms has hired me as well, because he had to weigh in. Yeah, that's my memory. Hadn't watched the show, had a great audition. Whether I'd gotten it or not, I would have walked out happy that day. I did what I came to do in the room, and it was pretty incredible from day one.
Wow, that's incredible. Do you have that scene? You said it's in the script. Do you remember what that scene that was
Yeah.
cut?
It's the first scene, and the first scene, which introduces Joyce, they're sitting in the diner, the four of them. Immediately thereafter, if you go back and watch it, I'm sitting at the counter in the diner by myself.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm there because a minute before I come up to the table, I'm like, Elaine, hi. And she's like, Joyce, hi, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. What are you up to? And I tell her that now I teach an aerobics class. And I invite her to come. I think at Manhattan Plaza, which is like a famous building in New York City. I think I might have, I'll have to look at the script. I should have done that before I came on. Anyway, and then there's that perfect, awkward Seinfeld real life moment where there's this moment where I think she's going to ask me to join them in the booth because there's room, because I think George hasn't come in yet. Because he comes in, right? And he's like, oh my God, this crazy thing just happened. So it's
Right.
Kramer, Gary, and Elaine, and I'm talking to her, and I see the empty seat, and there's this perfect comedic moment where she doesn't ask me. So I'm like, okay. And then I go sit, and I believe they have a whole conversation about me sitting there by myself. And she's like, yeah, I know, I feel awful, but then we couldn't talk about, what we talk about. So that's how Joyce was originally introduced. And then when I auditioned for a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode years later, they were like, why do we know you? And I was like, oh, because I was in Seinfeld. And they were like, oh my God, the contest. And one of them said, actually, we've just put out a DVD with all of the deleted scenes and sort of a kind of a Criterion Collection idea about Seinfeld.
Right.
And they were like, you were great. We just went over, which may be true or maybe not be true, but that's what they told me at the time.
That is so interesting. Yeah, because that episode, that beginning is almost perfect. Obviously, the Glamour magazine, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But you describing that, I could totally picture. Would love to to see that clip somewhere. Yeah. So you
Yeah,
mentioned
it's on some DVD collection. Maybe not called that anymore, but some collection.
Yeah, and then he mentioned was Larry and Hirschfeld, yeah, friend of the show. He's remarkable. Was he also the casting director on Curb? I was just curious if it was kind of the same different people. Okay.
Well, you know what? I can't say for sure. I think at that point, Mark had gone on to become like casting for, head of a network versus just having his own shingle on the door. But also when they came to New York, I don't know, maybe Mark was involved when they cast Curbed in LA, but when they came to New York, he wasn't in the room. And also, just so you know, when I was originally cast, the names were Ilana Levine, Estelle Harris, Andrea Parker, and Jane Leaves. Rachel Sweet hadn't been cast yet as Shelley, and Denise hadn't been cast yet. So in the very first read through, those parts were read by casting directors or other people. And then later, as the week went on, they came on and joined.
Interesting. Yeah, so funny. You didn't watch the show, or you knew of it. Obviously, it was still on
for sure.
It was still on Wednesday nights at that point. So you get the script of the contest, and you're leafing through this for the first time. This isn't Home Improvement or this is very different content. What's going through your head when you're first reading this script?
Sorry, my dog, I'm boring my dog. My dog is leaving.
We've had plenty of dogs on the podcast.
Okay. Come on in, Pop.
Bring her in. Bring him in.
So when I auditioned, I only had 1 or 2 scenes. I only had the sides. I didn't have the whole script. So I didn't go in having any idea what the contest was. And I don't even know if it was called the contest when I auditioned.
Right, yeah.
I learned what happens at the first read through. And it was so funny and so just ingenious, his figuring out how to talk about the thing without calling it the thing. And everyone in that show, this was the 4th season, so they were such a well-oiled machine as a company, and it really felt as much like a theater read-through as you could imagine, like loose and not improvising at the read-through. Everyone was doing the script as written. Also, I'm sure everyone's talked about this already, the number of people, the number of suits, as they were called, that would be at the first read-through. It went from like this intimate, fun audition room to like a fun meet and greet with bagels and food. And then when it was time to start the read-through, it was like an army of suits came in and filled up all those directors' chairs. And suddenly you just felt like, certainly as a guest star, like, oh wait, like this is serious business comedy. And I just remember getting a laugh right away and just being like, oh my God, thank God, because it was not a room that felt like ready for funny. Everyone's got like their yellow pads, their notes. It was like very intense. But Jerry set the tone. He just made it very warm and welcoming. And anyway, I just remember, you guys, this is so long ago. I don't even remember yesterday. So it's funny to think about this from so long ago. And also when we did it, I didn't realize it was going to become like one of the number 1 episode in Seinfeld history or win Emmys. It won so many awards. It went on the highlights reel. So, it's just shown a lot in different ways, even just clips. But I knew that I was in the company of like genius. It was just pure comedic genius from day one, even as it changed in little ways. And Estelle Harris joined the cast on that show, and she opened her mouth, and that kind of stiff room of executives, like everyone was floored, and they were like, oh my God, we've just witnessed, like we just saw a shooting star indoors. It was crazy. And she was a doll.
Yeah, I always say, that's the greatest introduction of a character probably ever, is her in the hospital. That's her first episode, the first time we really see her, and she just like you said, knocks it out of the park.
Yeah.
Speaking of knocking it out of the park, and you mentioned, the laugh you got, and just obviously you've seen the episode a million times, but rewatched it again today. And your first introduction as well with your, your leg up on the counter and the voice, the Marissa Tomei kind of connection you made earlier, that everyone knows that kind of person, like you said, that milieu. So great. I mean, obviously those are choices you were making, but like take us into that, like kind of that first scene with Julie there with your leg up on the counter, the whole thing, the voice. So
when
good.
New, are you guys actors?
No, not particularly.
Okay.
Well, Chris,
we're
we
not
started.
we're not in SAG, but
Yeah, we were in a production of Shakespeare once a while back.
Okay. I wondered what your own relationship to making choices as an actor. I just remember having this idea, and it's such a little thing. Should I put my leg up on the counter? Right? Like I didn't ask for permission. We didn't rehearse it, and it didn't say in the note she has her leg up on the counter. And I just remember being like, am I going to get yelled at? Like I was so I just didn't know. Like, are you allowed? And I maybe even asked Julia. I was like, I have this idea. And she was from SNL. She was so, I mean, she's someone who is very used to like in the moment, like, should we try this bit? Should we try that bit? Anyway, I just remember saying to her, like, I have this idea of putting my leg up on the counter. She was like, do it. I was like, okay. She's like, the worst that happens is they'll be like, you know what, let's do one. She made it clear, like, try stuff. And I remember the other thing she said to me, and I didn't know this because I hadn't been watching the show. She's like, listen, I hit. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, my character hits people. And I was like, okay. So when I don't know if it's in the first one or the second one, but like when she really grabs me, like John Jr., he asked for me, I just remembered, I don't even think we had to shoot it again. I mean, I was so shocked by her physical grabbing of me, and literally she almost had me over the counter itself. Anyway, it was so much fun. I remember being a little like, but wait, he's a real person. This is obviously before John Kennedy Jr. had passed away in a plane crash. And so, and he was someone I knew peripherally. He was on the board of my theater company, and I happened to have some really close friends who had gone to Brown University with him. Like, he was in my orbit. We weren't close friends. We were acquaintances. And I just was like, is this weird? Like that I'm referencing a real person in this context. And then, we all know afterwards he was on talk shows and he was aware of it and enjoyed it and laughed about it. But I just remember thinking, oh, this is weird. Like, he's real. And who knows what's going to happen. And we did it anyway. And he obviously loved it. And then it took on a whole new thing, when we lost him, that he was sort of part of this iconic thing. So it was like beautiful. And, it's sort of I don't know, in a crazy way, like a really sweet tribute to him.
Yeah. And
very different sort of context.
And he was actually on the final of when Jerry was doing the final with Jay Leno promoting the finale.
Yeah.
JFK Jr. was a guest with him, and they kind of chatted and laughed about that.
And he talked about how people were calling out to him in,
right.
New York City, where everyone just sort of talks to everyone, whether they know them or not. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, obviously the Kennedys played a lot of part in Larry and Jerry's writing, even up until then and beyond. So it was always kind of a focal point, but the JFK Jr. stuff was incredible. And, you saying he's got a great butt, great memorable lines.
Yes. And people would say that to me. And obviously I have a distinct voice. And so for years, people would just hear me talking like on a subway, and they'd be like, were you in Seinfeld? I was like, thank you.
And what's crazy is, I mean, you graduated Fordham in '86, let's say. I mean, you were young. I mean, on this episode, right? Yeah. And maybe, like you said, you going in without knowing, maybe that was easier. And again, I think this was the episode that just took it to another level.
The show.
The contest, yeah.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It was still Wednesday nights, but I think this was the one where like, wow, all right, we got to put this thing after Cheers. And then from there, it took off. Because believe it or not, that night, I was looking it up, it did $18.5 million. Now, keep in mind, a few years later, the Frogger was doing 33 million. Like, so it wasn't a big number. Actually, the Jackson movie on ABC that night actually won the ratings, believe it or not. So
I remember when Jason Alexander came on my podcast, he was saying, we take that expression for granted now, water cooler moment, which is,
Right.
still had water coolers in their offices, and that's where people would gather. And he was saying that was the first time they understood that they had created something that had like a real cultural moment in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes to the writing you touched on earlier too, just how well they crafted that episode. And Larry David obviously is the one who crafted it. I know you spoke a lot about Jerry and kind of his leadership from the top, and you mentioned Tom Sharonis, the director, who we love. And you mentioned you auditioned for Curb. So I'm curious, how was your interactions with Larry on the set of Seinfeld? I guess was he a part of any of your interactions there, or mainly with Jerry?
I feel like there was some, with everything. I don't have as yes, absolutely he was there. I was trying to remember if we did any sort of, he would walk up to the set. By the way, it was a very intimate set. It was at CBS Radford. It wasn't like a huge sprawling back lot feeling, the actual soundstage where we filmed. And I remember Larry coming up, and again, because I had no preconceived idea about his sort of vibe that he, this character persona, he was so sweet. He was so he was so supportive. He was like, what, we got it. Like, try anything. Like, he was so, again, like the idea, because you have no preconceived concept of somebody. Like, I just thought he was like darling. Which is hilarious when you think of kind of his kind of curmudgeon-y persona that he's created. In working with him, I worked with Neil Simon a lot in my early career. The most successful writers, especially in comedy, in some ways are like the most insecure. Like if something isn't working, I remember Neil Simon was like, "It's me, it's not you, it's me." And I'd be like, "Wait, give me a second. I jumbled up the words. Like, give me another try. Your writing is amazing," Neil Simon. And same thing with Larry. Like, I remember being so struck. He's like, no, if it's not working, it's not good. Like, there was this idea that it was something in the writing, as opposed to like this 20-something, like you said, 21-year-old girl trying to figure out what to do with it. So I just was so, I just thought, if this is sitcom, I want at it. Like, it just seemed so like doing theater. It just felt so free. And I found out this was a unique set in that way. Not everyone.
Right. Yeah, we've heard that from others.
Like that. Yeah. But he was lovely, and it was so silly. I mean, it was the silliest idea and written in the most intelligent way, and we were laughing while we were doing it, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I did listen to Little Known Facts, the podcast you did with Jason Alexander. Great listen for all you guys out there. And it's funny, you mentioned it was so silly, yet they had a bunch of silliness, but then they had a structure with Sharonis who kind of stabilized things, it sounds like. But Jason talked about that too. I think you asked him, like, was there competition? And he said, no, we were just lucky this thing was still going on, like, so they kind of just rode that wave because they always thought they were going to get canceled. They weren't going to make it. And they kind of,
it was such a rough start. I mean, it wasn't like a clear thing. It didn't shoot like a rocket into, America's living rooms and, never look back. It was complicated.
Exactly. So November 18th, that was a Wednesday of 92. And we're testing your memory here. So that's the next day, Thursday, your life change. I mean,
let me go back to Wednesday. So and I call my family, and everyone I know is going to watch.
Yeah.
I'm not in the first scene. I'm only sitting at the counter at the diner, and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I've heard that people, like, no one called to tell me I'm cut from the episode. Like, I was so sick inside when I first started watching. And wait, no, let me go back. I was in New York. I was in LA. My family was in New York. So they watched it 3 hours before LA. And I remember my mom calls and she's like, honey, do you just sit at the counter in the first scene? They noticed they really curled my hair. It was very Mystic Pizza vibes. And I was like, what am I wearing? She's like, I think you're in a yellow jacket. And I was like, oh my God, I've been cut. So that's my original reaction. And then they don't watch anymore because they think I was cut from the whole thing.
Wow. Wow.
And so luckily I had, I guess, I had told a bunch of people and I started getting a lot of calls. So I was like, okay, I am in it. He's got a great butt, like all of that's in. But my initial thing was like, oh my gosh, I called my parents. They told all their friends and I'm not in it. So that's that. I have to be honest, because it's 100 years ago. I don't remember the next day being, I have no recollection, just pure relief that I had actually been in it. But I ended up doing a lot of I did a bunch of stuff. I did a bunch of pilots. It did well for me in terms of people in the industry seeing it or you know what? Even if they didn't see it, they said they did. That's the other thing, right? Like, oh, you were in the contest. They
Right.
might have no idea what that was. But it definitely was a great kickstart to me doing sitcom pilots and just having a lane, not E-lane, but a lane that I felt really confident in.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you mentioned, you touched on it, and it's interesting you said it because we have heard it a couple of other times that, this is one of the first sitcoms you did, right? And then because of it, you got other, like you said, opportunities, and it sounds like you realize they're not all run the way Seinfeld's run, which is something we hear often. It's just one of those, I guess, lightning strikes, and we're like, be a part of it and lend your craft. But it's interesting that, so many of these are not run the way Seinfeld was run. And it's just like, goes to show, like you said, like with Larry and Jerry at the helm, how well they're crafted it. And then I'm curious, I know you mentioned this, but do you remember the Curb audition at all? Because we've heard that could be pretty intense too, as far as.
So my first job before this, my very first series when I got out of school was when HBO was like a brand new network. And I did a series with Robert Altman called Tanner 88.
Yes.
It was so improv based and I love it so much. It just so happens I have a really a great ease and comfort level with improv, even though that wasn't, oh my God, my dog. I'm really sorry, you guys. Even though that wasn't something I trained in or, I wasn't part of Groundlings or any of that world, but I just could figure out how to respond in character in a very authentic way without a script. And to Gary Trudeau, the Doonesbury cartoonist, wrote Tanner 88, and sadly, he wrote every script. And Altman was like, don't worry about what Gary wrote, do whatever you want. And now looking back, I think, poor Gary, he wrote 12 episodes and they were I don't know, they were a jumping off point rather than what we actually did. So all of that is to say, I learned early on that I should trust my instincts. And if I was in an environment that was really warm and welcoming, that they would serve me well. And I think, later on, I saw that there were many writers who felt really threatened by a better idea or people reacting to a better idea than what was on the page.
Right.
But anyway, with Curb, sorry to get back to that, it was so much fun. And I remember coming home and just saying to my husband, Larry David is the most fun scene partner. And whatever happens, that I had 20 minutes in a room. The longer you stayed, the more you knew he was having a great time. And it's such a great feeling to make Larry David laugh and to just be in a scene with him. Anyway, I love him. I just think he's a genius, and that I've had different experiences with him in my career or in my personal life have been always like special.
Amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
And you've had an incredible career. And I do want to touch on little known facts. I mean, close to 500 episodes. What's crazy is we've interviewed over almost 200 guest stars from Seinfeld, obviously, but
Right.
you know, they've been around the block. We've had no crossover. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think you've been doing mostly guest stars on the show.
Yes.
And I think, you know, I think the people that I've had on my show, part of why the show has been so successful is they're kind of not just names for Seinfeld fans, but kind of household names.
Bigger stars. You can say it, Ilana.
We get it. We get it. You had Uma and we've seen the list.
The reason funny. The reason Seinfeld is so special and what makes it so great is because of the guest stars, and the big four are so gracious and kind of not always take a back seat, but let you guys shine.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's true. I mean, also, I'm just thinking back. I have not thought about this, you guys, in so long. And I mean, it's been decades, and it's just so crazy seeing Michael do the way he comes into a room, which is so iconic, but actually being 2 feet away from that happening. Like, I can't even tell you when I think back, because obviously I started watching the show because I was like, these people are amazing. Just thinking back to like watching him figure out how to enter a room. I mean, it probably feels like how it was to watch Buster Keaton work, right? Or Charlie Chaplin, like to be that close to someone whose physical comedy was at a level that I had never been in the presence of before. Like, I just think back to all of the like, and the way Jason and Jerry and Julia would like just work out they would work out their own blocking, you know, like the director would be like, okay, come in a little more because the camera, you know, all the cameras, but they just were like, it could have been community theater. That's how hands-on everybody was in making the thing. And I still I just think back to like certain entrances. I remember Jerry, you know, just telling stories about like just life in New York. And it was still kind of strange for him to be having this sort of moment. And I don't know, it was very real. I guess they were all just so real. And it was very lucky when you work early on with people who are extremely talented and extremely generous. It sets the bar very high for future jobs. And that was like the standard for me after that.
Wow. Yeah. That makes sense, especially when you get, in front of those kind of people early on. It's interesting you said that too, because we've heard from Ann Tallman, who actually dated Michael Richards and met him on the set, that Buster Keaton was a huge influence of his. So that does make sense. And I'm curious because you mentioned Estelle, who obviously we love, and like you said, she was amazing. Were the other guest stars kind of did you guys kind of stay together and let the four on set? I'm talking, in between craft tables, things like that, like Jane Leeves or any of these other guest stars. Were you more inclined to, especially being newer? I
remember hanging out a lot with Jason because we just knew, it turned out we knew so, first of all, he's from New Jersey also, and started out in, theater in Jersey. And we just knew so many people in common. In fact, after that show, shortly thereafter, Jason directed his first film and cast me in it. And so I thought, well, that's incredible. Like, he wasn't just blowing smoke, in his telling me I was doing a really good job on the show. I remember kind of being excited to have a dressing room. I remember hanging out in my dressing room and making phone calls. I remember really like working on my lines all the time. I really wanted to get them right and do them right and work on the timing. And once we rehearsed, I saw kind of Julia's rhythms and I really wanted to match her. So I don't remember being on set. I remember being in the hair and makeup room and being next to Jason. I have a picture somewhere of us, like a Polaroid of us.
Nice.
Yeah. I just remember just like having him tell me about Sondheim. You know, I'm such a Broadway geek, and I was just like, and he's the best storyteller, and I think he was happy to share them with me. Um, yeah, that's what I really.
Yeah, you have a dog named Pippin, if I recall. That was probably years ago.
Yeah.
I listened to the podcast. So yeah, the podcast is unbelievable, and I loved it with Jason and Jay Greenspan, of course, from Livingston, New Jersey, and of course you're from Teaneck. See, listen, I'm raising kids in Bergen County. It sounds like a good spot because I don't know what's in the water. You got Mark Jacobs, you got David Stern from Teaneck High School, John Ventimiglia, Artie Bucco from The Sopranos. I know your husband was on The Sopranos.
Artie Bucco, aka Johnny Ventimiglia, or Johnny V, as we called him in high school, lives 5 blocks away from me in
You're
Brooklyn.
kidding.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see him all the time. And Chris Brancato, who my husband was on Godfather of Harlem, and Chris Brancato created that show and has Hotel Cocaine right now. He's also from my town and is a great friend. He was an upperclassman, but we've remained really close.
Teaneck. I was just over there for a lacrosse game. So, you know, it's another interesting. There's parallels between Seinfeld, and I think there's a parallel between Seinfeld and Charlie Brown to some degree. And I know you were in, you know, the play. You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, playing Lucy. We spoke with Chuck Klosterman. He's a writer about the '90s, and he referenced some similarities of relatability between George Costanza and Charlie Brown. And now that I'm thinking about it, talking to you, I'm like, maybe Lucy has a bit of a lane in her.
Yeah.
There's something about, you know, adolescence and just relatability. Like kids can relate to Charlie Brown just the way kids can relate to George Costanza, and adults.
Yes.
Like, there's kind of
I've never thought of it that way, but I feel like there are certain people in life and in pieces of art that we love that you feel like they have a kick me sign on their back, right? And Charlie Brown is definitely one of those people. He's so good-hearted, but he gets, you know, Lucy takes the football. He falls for it every time because he's pure goodness, right? I don't know that George is as guileless as Charlie Brown, right? I mean, Charlie Brown was absurdly pure and good and innocent no matter what. And I think George, you know, that character wanted things, right? Like he wanted things, but life constantly conspired to just have him slip on the banana peel. And and to Jason's credit, I feel like he was such, you know, he was able to create such a lovable, sympathetic character, even though he was always trying to like cut the line a little bit.
Yeah. It's a very good take. And as Chris mentioned, and I say this too often, the show is really about like perpetual adolescence, right? These guys, Jerry and George, are just two friends, but they're acting like kids. And it's interesting because you and Elaine in this episode, we get a little glimpse of that, whereas Elaine usually tries to be more adult than Jerry and George, and she's supposed to, but here she is having a crush on this guy. I mean, it's John F. Kennedy Jr., but you're and her are kind of like almost like schoolgirls with him. You know, I got a seat next to him for you, and like, oh, I talked about that kind of stuff. So it's really good to see her and you kind of interacting as those friends. And it's funny we missed that first scene because me and Chris were talking about it before you came on. Because she says my friend Joyce is she mentions you as her friend, but we never get to see that friendship. That first scene would have given us that glimpse, but they cut it. So now we kind of just have to know you, and then the way you guys talk and how she, you know, gets you get the spot for her, and it's just very playful how you guys interacted with each other. I'm sure that was a lot of fun with Julia.
I feel like I just thought of this, but when you were talking about comparing it, you know, it's also like Wendy and the Lost Boys from Peter Pan. You know, there are all these different sort of iconic characters that you can, or it's the Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's all the things. They're really, they're really uniquely singular voices. And then there's the magic that they cast each one of those people. I mean, I know Elaine, I know they added Julia later when they realized that would be a great addition to the show. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of episodes and a lot of funny.
Yeah, and like you said, Hirschfeld did an unbelievable job, and just to hammer home, like, people remember the guest stars from Seinfeld, like, clear as day. Like, no offense, you've been on Law and Order and this, that, and the other thing. They remember you from Seinfeld. It's just the ability, like I said, for the big four to be unselfish and, whether your foot's up there or you're wrestling with her, it's like, it's so memorable. So, incredible job. And thanks for making us laugh throughout all these years. And folks, if you haven't checked it out, Little Known Facts is a brilliant. It's just the way you're talking now. You're so easy to talk to. It's such an easy listen. So we appreciate all that work that you're putting into the podcast business as well.
Well, thanks for having me, and how much fun to trip down memory lane with you guys. I really appreciate it.
You're the best, Ilana. Best of luck.
Thank you, Ilana.
We'll talk down the road.
This was so much fun.
Bye, guys.
You.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.